Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Dager, the host of the Business 901 podcast. With me today is Dimitar Karaivanov. If I say that correctly, I'll have him repronounce it. He is the CEO of software company Kanbanize, and as the name indicates, a product designed to help advanced product teams apply the principles of Lean and Kanban to their work to maximize their results. Dimitar, thanks for joining me. Your company is somewhat of a young company, I think, 6 years old. Tell me, just to start out, tell me, why did you start it, develop the product? Give me sort of that elevator speech about it.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, Joe. I'm really delighted to speak in front of your listeners. It's really a pleasure to be here. And regarding Kanbanize, it's actually 4.5/5 years old. So it's even younger than what you suggested. I have a personal story about it, and if you don't mind, I'd like to tell it. It started around 2010 when I was working for a big German company. I was the R&D manager for a couple of teams there, and we were a pure waterfall organization. So no agile, no lean, just pure waterfall. And that was causing a lot of issues. As it happens with most of the waterfall organizations, we had some quality problems, we had some predictability problems, we had some product problems and whatnot. To tackle all this, our board of directors, they hired a new senior vice president for the company to take on the entire R&D department. His name is Christoph Roland, and by the way, he later became one of our investors, which was a coincidence. But he comes to the company, and one of the first things he does is to gather together around 10 people, one person from each location, and I was the person for Bulgaria. And he asked us to become his change agents, the people who would help him and his vice presidents to implement a lean and agile transformation. So we got trained really well by one of the best trainers I know in the world, and we were sent back to the offices to help people change. And during that time, there were many initiatives. So one of them was the feature management initiative, which basically meant that we had to take the features that everybody was working on and deliver them in the fastest way possible. But what we discovered is that the teams were very good at starting features and not so good at completing them. And I was dealing with Kanban at that time, and I knew that we should be good at finishing things and not good at starting things. So I started to ponder over about this management layer and how we could fix things on the management layer. And it occurred to me that applying Kanban on the management layer is a really good idea. And I started pitching it all over the place. People were receptive to it. And we implemented our own solution, but it wasn't that good. So I went ahead and started a company to actually tackle this problem on the feature level, to be able to map management processes and complete things fast enough. So in many words, that was Kanbanize. It started out of necessity.
So did you have a personal drive, I mean, to start your own company, or was it more just we needed a product, and the product's not right? Did you just have a drive to make that, not that perfect product, but, make that product?
Yeah, I'm a pure product guy. I have engineering background, and I get excited about great products. And we obviously had the Jiras and the TFS and whatnot available in the company, but they weren't working well enough, not to say something stronger. So we just needed to have something better, and that excited me a lot because I saw this huge potential in the whole space. There was nothing like that before. So I went ahead and started my own company with two of my best friends, which was great. And that was my personal take. I just had to make something better, and this generally excites me as a person.
Sure. So you're kind of that designer, that engineer at heart, right?
Yeah, something like that. And I later had to deal with a lot of marketing and a lot of sales, a lot of training and things like that. So I would say I personally have a flavor of almost everything. But my biggest strength is products, building good products.
Well, there's a lot of Kanban software products out there. Okay, they all sort of have a different flavor about it. What is different than about Kanbanize? Is it because it's feature? Developed a little bit around the features more so. Is that the difference?
Yeah, actually, when we started, I think there were only a handful, maybe one or two, I'm not quite sure. But there are a couple of things that we built into Kanbanize to make it sort of unique. And there are two layers to this question. So the first layer is the concept thing, and the second layer is the actual feature set. I'll start with the concept first. So what you get with most of the management tools out there is an official methodology or a process that has software on top of it. And they kind of require you to use the software in this specific manner. We found out during my change agent work that even if the software is really good, it cannot fulfill the needs of all the customers out there. So when we started with Kanbanize, we said we shouldn't implement Scrum or XP or Kanban or whatever process you can think of, traditional waterfall, whatever, but we will make it both a platform and a solution at the same time. So we started with a platform that it's really customizable, it's really flexible, and I will talk about that later probably. So you could basically take the platform being a Kanban tool / Kanban board, but then make it work for your needs. So this was what we started with. We didn't want to use it that way. We wanted to leave people to decide for themselves what worked better for them. And the second thing was the actual feature set. So we're really good in three things. So one is the feature management that I talked about. It's basically building a hierarchy of work. You have the features, then the second level, as children, you have the user stories, and you could have unlimited layers of children, that could be broken down into multiple layers. And then we have the automation, which I would say is the real beauty in Kanbanize, because if I'm a developer and I have absolutely no idea what features are there above me, and I move my card to in progress, then the system would move the entire feature to in progress. And that would signal a hell lot of people that something's going on down there. And they have the means to control things. So this is the second big thing. And the third about Kanbanize specifically is flow analytics, which is a bit different from agile analytics and completely different from project management analytics. So cumulative flow diagrams, scatter plots, Monte Carlo simulations, things like that. This is where we accelerate. So that's how we differ from most of the Kanban tools out there.
I'm, lack of a better word, a team leader, upper management, whatever we want to call those guys, right? But I can watch my feature set to see if I think something should have moved or if something did move. I can notice that right off without having to dig down and watch individual lanes or children, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we can go further with that, because when some of the children cards down the chain gets blocked, for example, because in Kanban we have this notion of blocking cards, saying that we cannot proceed to the right in the workflow. If the child card gets blocked, then the parent, which might be a feature, a project, a program, whatever you want to call it, then it also gets blocked. And if you take a look at your management view, you can instantly notice that there's something wrong in there. And you could go there, dig deeper, and try to help unblock this feature. So instead of asking for status reports all the time, you can just go ahead, see the board. Is there anything blocked? Is there anything that's disturbing? No, then we're fine.
Okay. Now I'm going to preface this question, okay, with a little words. You can't use everyone, okay? All right.
Sure.
But who have you found that your best target customers are? If you could only have one client and tell you, who would it be and why?
Right. Kanban is big in tech companies right now. So I would say around 80 to 90% of our customers are tech companies. So we are definitely leaders in that area. If we had to have one customer, it would be a tech company between 20 and 500 people. So we are more in the SMB. Yeah, we have various customers, to be honest, and
Sure.
have just a single user, and then we have several thousand users. But our ideal customers, I would say, are around 100 people, and they would deploy Kanbanize in all their departments. The power of lean, the way I see it and the way other people see it, is when it's adopted at scale. If you only adopt it on the team level, it works, but the whole is always more important when we talk about lean. So if we could deploy Kanban and Kanbanize in particular on the company level, that's when huge transformations happen. And we've seen companies, for example, we have actually a customer in the States called 3D Marketing. They are an agile shop. They deployed Kanbanize everywhere, and they grew the company twice in a matter of a year by applying all these lean principles. So that's where we are targeting right now. And in the near future, it will be more and more big companies, because they are becoming aware that there are better ways to do things. And we start talking about Kanban and lean with huge corporations.
Corey Lattis, when he wrote the book Kanban, I think it was years and years ago, right? I mean, this is like 10 years ago when he wrote that book. And one of the statements he made in it is that there never should be two boards that are the same. And
Right.
when we talk about scaling and we talk about the flexibility within boards and Kanban boards and things, I seem to be contradicting myself on them thoughts, okay? What's your thinking behind that?
Yeah. First of all, I would always start with a simple Kanban board, with the simplest design I would imagine to work well. And I would probably map the queues in the process. So this is stages that are waiting for something. For example, I have the development column, and then I have ready for testing. I would always have these ready columns. We call them queues internally, because that's where we find cards spend most of the time. And a lot of teams are not attempting at all to measure the process efficiency. So this is how much time a card spends in these waiting states versus the entire cycle time. And you might be surprised, but it's usually below 15%, the process efficiencies in companies. And ours, they are always above 50, sometimes around 70, 80, and for our support processes, they're around 98. So almost no waiting at all. I would start there, know when it's waiting and when it's actually working, and then we would evolve it from there, as the Kanban principle suggests. So start where you are and improve collaboratively to a better.
So I don't need the same Kanban board across the whole business, okay? All individual children can somewhat have their own board. Is that true?
Absolutely. I would argue that if you had the same Kanban board in each team in the organization, you don't know exactly how Kanban works. So I would expect different teams to have different Kanban boards. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So in your system and some of your writings, I noticed the word business rules engine. I don't catch that in reading a lot of others. I'm sure it means a similar thing to what someone else says or phrases it different. But what is that, and why is it important?
Actually, I think we're still the only Kanban software on the market that has this thing. Do you know Outlook? Have you used Microsoft's Outlook?
Regretfully, yes, yes.
Yeah. So it has this rules engine. I wouldn't say it's an engine. It has this rules support where you say whenever an email comes from that person, move it to this folder, for example.
Right.
So the business rules engine in Kanbanize is something like that, but it's actually much more flexible and much more powerful. We would use the business rules to implement these custom solutions that I talked about in the beginning. So Kanbanize is the platform, and what makes it a solution is part the design of the board itself and part the business rules engine which we put on top. So we would automate the workflow through the entire board with the business rules engine. We would say if a card has taken more than 3 days, for example, you could move it top to the expedite lane because we want to complete it within 3 or 4 days. We could say whenever somebody changes the card color to red, I want to get a custom notification. Or when the child card is moved, move the parent. Or when the child card is blocked, block the parent. It's a sort of programming language of its own. And you can do weird things with our system and the business rules engine. I tried to calculate the different permutations of actions that you could implement, but I stopped at around 10,000. So you could literally do thousands of things with the business rules engine, and it's pretty unique. And why is it important? I think it's important for 3 reasons mainly. So the first one is customization that I mentioned. The second one is that you can manage dependencies with the business rules engine. And at first it might sound like an easy thing to do, but I would claim that the project manager in an organization, their primary job is to manage dependencies and to resolve blockages. And when you delegate this to the system, then our process suddenly becomes a lot more clear, a lot more easy. And I would give an example. A dependency would be, I cannot proceed on the right unless the QA guys have finished testing my story, for example. And in Kanbanize, we could do the following. I would work on my card on the dev board, and I will complete it, and I will move it to the ready for testing column. And then Kanbanize will see that and will automatically create another card on the testing board, which would signal to the testing guys that they have to test something. And then they will work, and they will move it to done. And then the card on the dev board will move to the next column, signaling that testing has completed. And nobody has to talk about it. It's all built in the software, and it's customizable, which is even more important. So every team can tweak that to serve their needs. And last but not least, it's analytics. When we automate all these movements through the system, it's not humans that actually move the cards, then we get our analytics really precise. And that's how we stop asking for status reports. That's how we stop logging time. And a lot of people have to say, today I worked 3 hours on this and 4 hours on this. We don't have to do that with Kanbanize. So it's really our most flexible and the most powerful module in Kanbanize.
I thought it was quite interesting when I went through it. But the other thing I noticed when I was reading your download, Lean Software Development with Kanban, that's available on your website. Yes, yeah. yes. Saw that there. I'm glad you held that up. It seemed that you had interest in the history, in the lineage of Lean. Okay, you just weren't like this guy, what's next, and here I go, and everything. And I appreciate that because, as you noticed in my background, I have history, right? I got a bookshelf full of history back here. One, I want to compliment you for it, but
thank you.
What author, trainer has really influenced your work the most?
I would say that all the authors in the Kanban and Lean space are pretty much famous for what they did. So I usually search outside this field, and one of the people that has contributed to me as a person forming the way I formed as a person is Dr. Christopher Avery. He has this leadership program called the Leadership Gift. Maybe you know him. His responsibility process work is just amazing. I teach that to every person I know because it has really changed my life for the better. And the responsibility process, I just recommend it highly to anybody that listens to this podcast. And in terms of authors, I really admire Ben Horowitz for his The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and Andy Grove, the former CEO of Intel, for High Output Management. And if we talk about business, I would stress on Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore, which is my business Bible. I'm a huge fan of this book. These are the people, of course, amongst many others, that influenced me as a person and as a business guy as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you went outside of the Kanban because that, there is so many of them there, and I'm sure you've read about all of them. Okay, the Christopher Avery is such an excellent choice because he kind of, I think, is under the umbrella. He's not out there with the big writers like the Likers and the Toyota Way type stuff and everything, but his material is just awesome.
Absolutely.
With the Internet of Things and even the humanization of software, where do you think that's going to take Kanban software? Maybe in general terms and maybe even your own company, but do you kind of thought about where it's going to be 5 to 7 years from now?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm not entirely sure about the IoT stuff, but I'm absolutely sure that artificial intelligence and machine learning are making their way into not just the Kanban world, but the management world in general. We see that Salesforce, they have Einstein now. It's their AI CRM. And I believe this is happening in the Kanban world in just a few years. We ourselves are embarking on an AI implementation in Kanbanize. It's still very early in the process, but we're getting there. We started with pure statistical analysis. We have this analytics module, which it's called Actionable Agile because it's a company that does analytics. So we have a partnership with them, and we integrated Actionable Agile into Kanbanize, and we would feed a lot of data into what we call Monte Carlo simulations. And doing that, we are able to predict, based on historical data, with great amount of certainty, how much work you will be able to do by next summer, by next year, or whatever. So this is pure statistics. But with machine learning in the picture, what we are trying to do now, we would be able to implement much more sophisticated algorithms, which would analyze a lot of data, and they would be able to raise warnings or just suggest improvements to your process based on their analysis, where any human would fail. So this is where I see technology going. And as far as adoption is concerned, we see a lot of push, a lot of pull actually in Kanban outside IT. And that's quite promising to me because we see a lot of marketing people talking about Kanban, a lot of legal guys, HR, operations. They are more and more familiar with Kanban, and they are starting to look for solutions, which is great. And I foresee some great days for the industry in the near future.
Well, I think as people develop different agile practices, waterfall becomes a little more difficult to fit. Kind of, that square peg into the round hole or round peg into the square hole. Okay. You're from Bulgaria. And how difficult, or what was maybe the disadvantages, the advantages to bringing a product online from that area? I mean, I'm a U.S. guy. I mean, we're used to having big enough market that we just market to the U.S. and we think about the other guys. When you're in a country like Bulgaria, I mean, a large percentage of your sales even starting out, is outside of your direct influence, okay, or your direct area. What makes that different? I'm always inquisitive about that and never really have asked that question before. So throw it over to you. How can you answer that?
Yeah, it's not easy for sure, but there's always an advantage and a disadvantage. The obvious disadvantage is that our market is small, our internal market is small, and we are far from our customers because we sell around 60% to the US market, and then almost the entire 40% that's left to Western Europe. So we have just a handful of customers in Bulgaria, and it's hard to get feedback. So this is my main problem, that in order to get face-to-face feedback, I either have to talk to somebody via Skype, for example, or I need to fly there. And it's more often that I fly there. So we travel a lot, and we meet our most important customers and users, and we try to collect as much feedback as we can, and to make the lives of these people easier. That's our goal. But there's also an advantage, and it's because we have a lot of IT talent, a lot of digital marketing talent, and when we sell over the internet, it's less and less important where your product is being built. But we have great engineers, and Kanbanize, for example, was built by Bulgarians in Bulgaria, and we're proud of that. And we market it over the internet with an SEO and landing pages, a lot of advertisement. We go to events. We actually sponsor a lot of events for Agile and Kanban. We are active supporters of the community. But I would say that although there are difficulties going to market, there are many advantages in terms of cost of labor, great talent locally. So we are competitive on the market because of these.
Yeah. No, and I've always been amazed the amount of IT talent in Bulgaria. It seems like it's a thriving tech capital, actually.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
What's the best way for someone to connect with you and learn more about Kanbanize?
Yeah, that would be over email or on social. So my email is dimitar@kanbanize.com, and I'm sure people will be able to find me on social. Of course, I would rather go on Twitter or LinkedIn. So that would be appreciated, actually. And if people want to read that book that I showed, they could go to our website and download it as a free ebook from the homepage. So that's also an option.
And I saw that. I enjoyed the read of the book, and like I said, I thought it was very interesting, and I enjoyed the way you melded a little of the historical and a little of the lean type thinking, into Kanban. Not everybody does that well, and you did that very well.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you very much, Dimitar. It was a pleasure talking to you. This podcast will be available on the Business 901 iTunes Store and Business 901 website. So I want to thank all the listeners for listening.
Thank you, Joe. It's been amazing talking to you. Thank you so much.